Okay, we'll call to order the Planning Committee meeting on Wednesday, November 17th. It's 4 o'clock. And I'd like to welcome Councillors Andy Hobbs and Councillor Chuck Au as members of the Planning Committee. Welcome aboard. And we have our agenda in front of us. The first item is the minutes of November the 2nd. Any errors or omission? Motion to adopt. Move seconded. All those in favor? Contrary. Carried. Our next meeting is November 30th in the council chambers. And by the way, just for information, there is no meeting scheduled for December for Planning Committee. The first item on the agenda is the application from Enrich Custom Homes Limited for rezoning at 8231 number 3 Road from RS1E to RC2, and staff have a positive recommendation. And Mr. Craig and Mr. Andrews, anything to add to your recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing further to add except to highlight that the rezoning is to facilitate the subdivision of one single-family lot into two compact single-family lots with vehicle access restricted to the rear lane. One-bedroom secondary suites are proposed for each lot, and one city tree will be retained with on-site hedging and an undersized tree further reviewed for retention relocation as part of the landscape plan required as a condition of the rezoning. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions? Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair to staff. Thank you for this. Just two questions, actually. So on CLN 8, it says that they have to pay 100% landscape security deposit, and then they also have to pay on top of that the $10,000 tree retaining thing, or is that like one and the same? Or
through the chair, that is correct. They have to provide a landscape security as part of the landscape plan, as well as the security for tree survival.
Okay, and then my second question is, what's the plan for this strip of road? Because if I recall correctly from driving up and down this road, and also from looking at it, it seems that you drive into the Sunnymead neighborhood and there's sort of an extension of 3 Road inside that row of trees or hedgerow, and then the house starts. So why wouldn't you want to have the driveway on the noisy side of the street and have the living area, like nice backyard area where you're going to actually sit in your backyard, on the nice west side where it gets afternoon sun and it's quieter? Or what's our plan for that? Why are we doing it this way?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, in terms of densification, if there is lane, we do prefer that the vehicle access come off the lane. In terms of long-term plans for the frontage road on number 3 Road or adjacent to number 3 Road, there are no plans for change to that frontage road configuration. It is intended to be maintained.
Okay, but so in this, like, I know they've already designed it, and they don't care because they're not going to live in it. But like, it seems to me that when we have a situation like this, wouldn't we want the cars on the arterial road side of things when there is that buffer road there, right? Like, doesn't that make sense? Or like, if it were to further densify, then what would happen? We'd get rid of that buffer. Like, help me understand what we might do with that, because it seems to me you're just creating that huge dead space. Maybe there's free parking there, but okay, but you put the garage on the other side. So now what? Like, does that make sense?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, I understand the commentary. What I would say is that the pattern of establishing lane access to these very limited lots on number 3 Road that do have a frontage road has already been established through subdivisions in this immediate vicinity.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Carol? You're muted. We've lost your picture and we lost you. Let's try again.
You got it. Sorry.
Okay, we got you. Okay,
I
you're on.
realized.
You're on.
I actually agree with Councillor Liu. Normally, we would not want a driveway on an arterial road, but this particular stretch of number 3 road is not an arterial road. There is a sub road that is in front of number 3 road. And in order to have any kind of backyard at all, it would make more logical sense to me if the front yard was where the driveway is, which is where many of them did have their driveways. So I think that this should be switched around on this one particular location, or for the entire stretch of that sub road to number 3 road.
Okay, any
Through the chair, I'm not sure was a question there, but if I could add to my previous comment, another reason for requiring access to be from the lane does relate to the streetscape that is presented. These lots will be approximately 12 meters wide. If a driveway is provided to the frontage road along number 3 road, the character that would be created along number 3 road would effectively be one of just garage doors with very limited house presence along the street.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, motion to give first reading. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Okay. The next item we have on the agenda then is the increased maximum fines for tree protection bylaw. And our designation speaker is Mr. Jaggs. And we have a couple of delegates first. So Mr. Jaggs, do you want to introduce anything, and or shall we hear from the delegations first?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Cooper, okay, sorry.
Yes, Mr. Cooper. Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, we have nothing to add.
Okay, thank you very much.
We'll just listen.
Okay, we'll hear from the delegations. I believe Mrs. McGugan is first. I wonder if we can open up her mic and see if she's there. Mrs. McGugan, welcome, and you have a presentation for us, and you have 5 minutes. So,
Yes, can you hear me okay?
And we have your letter that you gave us for November 17, 2021, just so you know that. Okay? You're on.
Okay, that's good. So, Sharon McGugan, President, Garden City Conservation Society. We really support this this increase in fees and penalties for the cutting of trees, mainly because we lose too many of them in Richmond through all kinds of ways, and the ones that are cut are legally. It's really heartbreaking. We know that the city staff work hard to protect these trees and development. A lot of people put a lot of effort into keeping these trees in many cases, and then as time passes, they disappear. They're cut from backyards or sometimes front yards, and we know that there's people in Richmond that will cut trees without permits. $10,000 doesn't make up for a mature tree, for a decades-old tree. So we're very happy that this is being presented a higher fee for a better valuation of the trees. So increased penalties are good, but we feel that there should also be increased public education. I know that the city puts notice in the newspaper at least once a year. It could be more than that. And online as well about don't chop trees and illegal tree cutting, but we don't think it's enough. We think there needs to be more public education. Many people do not understand the bylaw. They don't know there is one, or if there is one, ignore it, I guess. Point 2 is signage is really effective. It's really effective seeing that stop tree work order sign. People stop, they look at it, it means something. We've noticed recently that some of the boulevard trees have been topped or or altered, changed, but not by city staff. We just had a comment that it would be helpful in those cases to have some kind of signage, similar signage put on any trees that were illegally pruned or chopped on city land, because people see it and then some people like to copy. So that's something we'd like to avoid. Also, working to protect these trees takes a lot of time and a lot of follow-up, and we wonder if there's adequate staff given the large population increases to Richmond and proposed more increases. We'd like to see more staff. We feel basically the most important point is that more proactive work needs to be done to protect trees from being illegally cut in the first place. They take so long to grow. You know, they're cut or they're damaged, and then the habitat, the biodiversity is lost for decades. That's how long we need to wait. So we'd really like to see the city take strong action, and we agree completely with the staff and the tree protection staff analysis that the increase in fees, the penalties, is a much stronger deterrent, but also I particularly love it sends a signal to the community that city council takes these issues seriously. How will the members of the community take it seriously unless our representatives do? So we really hope that that this goes forward. It's heartbreaking when mature trees are illegally cut. And let's do whatever we can to stop this from happening. Increasing penalties is a good first step, and I want to say the Tree Protection Department, we strongly support. We're doing great work around trees, and we're lucky we have that kind of department operating in the city. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for your written presentation, and thank you for your oral presentation, and there are other delegations as well. Thank you. Okay, could we have Mr. Flintoff as well as a presentation? Mr. Flintoff, welcome. You have a presentation on item number 2, and you have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Yeah, I made thank you, Mr. McNulty. I made a presentation in writing on, I thought the fine was excessive for the homeowners, and it should be separated into developers and homeowners. The developers should incur the higher rate of $50,000, not the homeowners. And the other thing is the fruit trees and the cherry trees and all the rest of this, they need to be exempt from the bylaw because this is a fruit-bearing tree and they need to be pruned. And if they become diseased, the disease will spread. And we have plum trees that are diseased, but I can't cut them down. And we've got a birch tree out front on city property that's got the birch bark beetle disease. And it overhangs my neighbor's driveway and his vehicle. And we've been after the city at least once now. They've come and trimmed it. They need to come and trim it again. There seems to be some reluctance or difficulty in getting it trimmed. The other thing is we've just had this rain event, and it's become very noticeable that the storm drains are being plugged by leaves. And the question comes, if the trees are protected, who's going to clean the storm drains? Is that the city again? That's a cost that the city has to bear. And the question is, how many trees are permitted on a lot? Is it 1, 2, 3? I've got about a dozen trees on my lot. I would like to trim some of them because they overhang the house, and I would consider that a hazard. It puts moss on the roof, causes extra maintenance. And because the older houses have mature trees and the newer houses don't, are we being treated equally under the law? And at what point is regulation on private property necessary? I think the homeowners appreciate the fact that trees are a benefit, at least in our area, and nobody's randomly cutting down trees, but we're seeing the developers, even though they have permits and fences around the drip lines, those trees die within weeks of the construction starting, and it's snowing. You can talk to the developers, they know. So I think there has to be some more rationale, some more definition, and some more exemptions added to this law. I don't think it's good as it stands. And that's my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Mr. Ersick. Okay, thank you, Mr. Flintoff. No questions, but Mr. Ersick, comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a couple of quick comments, because I think in that presentation you heard a number of different issues being conflated. Firstly, I would say that trees that are in the public domain, street trees, park trees, they are under the jurisdiction of our Parks Department. And so if somebody has an issue with one of those trees, whether it's leaves or pruning or, and frankly, there's always differences of opinion about what should be done with particular trees. So, but if they're public domain trees, it's our Parks Department that will deal with that. That's not what we're dealing with here. What we're dealing with here is basically trees under the tree bylaw, which are typically on private property. And I would just say to you, to the suggestion that we should differentiate between residents or property owners and developers, it becomes very difficult to tell the difference. And I would discourage you from going down that road. You know, we've had an example where the agent of a property owner arrived in a taxi and butchered trees and then left with a chainsaw. And we've had another example where it would appear that a significant tree has been willfully poisoned. And so what we're doing here is there is room under the legislation to increase the penalty for the willful destruction and damage of trees. And what we're looking to do as a staff is to increase the penalty to the $50,000, which is the maximum allowed under the legislation. But it will ultimately be the court that decides on the circumstances, the detail of a particular case, what the fine will be. We're simply removing what we think is a too low ceiling. And honestly, $10,000, it's a cost of business for some people. It's not enough to discourage the damage and killing of mature trees in the community. So that's what we're doing with this. We're not reopening the whole tree bylaw or getting into fruit trees, etc. That can be done on a resident to staff level. All we're doing here is increasing the penalty for willful damage to trees.
Okay, thank you very much. Carol?
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Ersick, for really pointing out the details of what this is all about. We have to have the carrot and we have to have the stick. And without that, we cannot save the trees that are willfully being damaged by, more often than not, developers. In my opinion, this is absolutely going in the right direction, because we're going to destroy the character of the neighborhoods if we don't support saving these trees. And we've way too many times seen a developer come in and know darn well that it's going to cost me 10 grand to take this tree out, cost of doing business. My question is, what about also requiring that a tree of significant size and the same character be replanted in the location where the tree was willingly removed, even though the developer knew it was not allowed? Can we add that?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, perhaps I can deal with that. Yes, we have a referral currently and we're working on that. And I believe that we will be able to bring you a a set of options that allow you, where somebody has removed a significant tree with a large canopy, that would allow you to basically protect that canopy area so that people who are willfully damaging trees don't benefit from having inflicted that damage by getting additional development space on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know when that report is coming, and is it necessary in order to make an amendment today?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, James will correct me, but I think you're going to see it within the next 2 months. And it is a complicated issue that requires changes to a number of bylaws. It isn't, on the surface, it seems very simple, but in practice, it's actually quite complex to pull off. So I don't think it's something you can do on the fly. We deliberately decided to bring you this report to increase the penalties because we've had willful destruction of trees, but that bigger referral is not ready to come back. It wasn't ready to come back today. That's why we brought you this ahead.
Okay, I appreciate that, Mr. Ersick, and I encourage you, Mr. Cooper, to work on that report as soon as you can. I really feel that the $50,000 is a great step forward in protecting the tree canopy, but I also feel that replacing that tree and that $50,000 fine in really egregious cases is going to be paramount to making sure we save the character of Richmond. So thank you for your hard work, everybody. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. Andy?
Thank you, and through the chair. Thank you, and I do support the recommendation. I just think it is important, and Mr. Ersick touched on it, is just to, confirm for members of the public that this isn't a case of people wandering around and issuing a ticket for $50,000 for a fine. This is a long form of prosecution, which goes to a court and ultimately is decided by a judge. And the judge may go with the $50,000, may go with something less, depending on the exact circumstances that are presented in court. So I think it's important for everybody to know that, as Councillor Day just mentioned, these are for egregious examples of trees being deliberately destroyed. So it's not just a simple matter of issuing tickets, but also just like a comment from staff on, this isn't unique to trees in terms of having this level of penalty for deliberately and flagrantly violating one of Richmond's bylaws or requirements. So if you could just maybe touch on that, because I don't believe it is the only example of where you'd have fines that would add up to $50,000 or more if they're compounded. So am I correct in that?
Mr. Ersick or Mr. James?
Mr. Chairman, James, you're muted. James is trying to address the question. But
right.
Okay, I'm sorry. My apologies. My apologies. Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, throughout the city do long form prosecutions in the building approvals department for flagrant violations of city bylaws as it pertains to building or illegal building or building contrary to bylaws or zoning bylaws. In particular, we have gone through long form prosecutions where the fines are $10,000 per occurrence per day. And this is nothing unusual.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Chuck? I'll get you.
I'm very supportive of the staff's recommendation. I think perhaps this is not enough, but I think it's a good first step in the right direction. I want to ask staff, how many cases did we have in the past that we have to bring it to court, and what were the results? Did we got the results that we want in terms of fines being imposed?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, sorry, James. I think if we're going to explore that question in detail, we should probably do it in a closed session. We have ongoing situations, and I think that a close discussion of that would be in order, and it would also give James and Gord a bit of a chance to collect their thoughts on it.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Harold?
Yeah, I certainly support the 50,000. I don't know how many people saw the sequoia on Steveston Highway a few blocks from my place a few months ago. Somebody went in and started chopping the lower branches off. There was a house, the lot had been cleared next door. I don't know who cut them down, whether it's the owner that had the sequoia on his yard or the owner of the lot next door, or whether the construction company. Anyway, I complained, but somebody had already complained ahead of me. So we now have a sequoia with half the branches cut off at the bottom. But if it was, and it's badly pruned, it looks terrible. But if it was cut down, it was planted around 1961. In other words, 60 years ago, and that's how long it takes to grow a tree that's 4 or 5 or 6 feet in diameter. So a $10,000 fine is peanuts, because if you're building a $2 million house, that's just a drop in the bucket. 50,000 might get their attention, and I think it's important that we raise the level of the fines commensurate with the values of the properties and the housing that's going in there, because this one does have a very large canopy, and I'm pleased that staff's going to bring in something to protect the canopy. But that canopy, if that tree was cut down, would have to be protected for the next 50 years before the tree reached the same width and height. And in terms of replacing the tree, you simply can't replace a sequoia that big. You can get something a little bit better than a seedling, but it's still going to take 50 or 60 years. So I certainly support the $50,000. And I don't know if staff is familiar with that tree or not, but does anybody know who was cutting down, the owner or the neighboring owner or the builder or what, or if anybody knows anything about it?
Through the chair to Councillor Steeves, I would refer that to Mr. Jaggs, who attended the site.
Through the chair to Councillor Steeves, the background on that specific site was the developer had actually hired an arborist to do some crown raising, removing lower branches on that tree with the owner's permission. However, we stopped the work because it was during a heat dome, and there would have been desiccation on the roots of the tree. So it was the wrong time of year to do that. So we stopped work and said we will discuss leveling that out, removing, balancing out some of that lower branch removal later in the year when it's the appropriate time to do it. The work that was done on that tree did not damage the tree, but it was the wrong time of year to do it. So we stopped them while they were starting it, and that's why it looks so awkward right now.
Okay, because one side is trimmed and the other isn't, so it will be leveled out then, so it'll look better.
That's correct. And we also required the builder to provide mulching under the tree to protect the root system where the branches had been removed and to improve the tree's overall health.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Okay. Michael?
Thank you very much through the chair. Just a couple of short comments and then a few questions that came from the discussion that we've just had and what the delegates have shared. And thank you for this opportunity to address the committee. The delegates, I think there was one thing that they had in common was that they both felt that the existing tree bylaw doesn't go far enough in the direction they see. And I know today is about taking what the province is now allowing us to do to that upper limit, which I wholeheartedly support. If there was opportunity for us to go higher, I think Richmond should, but we don't have that opportunity. So if we think of the two events that we've just had this year, the heat dome that was just referred to, and the storm, the river in the sky that came down, trees are in Richmond, I think, partially why we fared well in both of those situations. The really large, significant trees that the maximum fine would actually apply to are the ones that shaded our communities and helped to keep the heat of an urban landscape cooler. So we're so thankful for them. Also, the fact that we have all this soil underneath the significant trees that can take in some of the water. I just heard on the way home that all the water in the Sumas Prairie, they're wondering where it's going. Well, it doesn't just disappear. It didn't just go into the river. It's going underneath those farm fields, just like the water does in Richmond underneath the large trees. So I think it's so vitally important that we have those upper limits. I agree with, I think it came out of both delegates, the having a multi-tiered approach, because I don't have to walk far, and I can find a development site that has a large dead tree with the tree protection fence around it, and it's been like that for a year and a half. And it's like has been said, it's the cost of doing business. I've talked to couples with a single child who'd say, "Oh, $10,000 to get rid of that tree, but we want to put a shed or put something." Yeah, even a young family sees $10,000 as the cost of doing business in some cases. Sorry, my question to staff. First one was in the first delegate. It was the level of staffing for tree preservation. If that could be commented on now, or perhaps there would be an option for hiring more in the tree preservation at the upcoming budget process, where we get that list of items at the end. Hey, should we hire more in this department or that department? Could you speak to the tree preservation staffing? Thanks.
Perhaps I can do that through the chair. It's kind of awkward for James and Gord to maybe comment on this. I think the reality is that the staffing level in the building department for the administration of the tree bylaw is fairly light. Give me a nod if it's correct. I think there are 3 staff there. But probably like every area of the organization, it could always do with more staff. And so I don't really think that here and now is the right forum and situation to be evaluating more staff. We can certainly bring forward, as part of the budget process, more staffing can be brought forward. But I wouldn't encourage the committee to get into that today, just in this area. The other thing that I would say is that it isn't just, when it comes to tree protection, it isn't just Gord's staff. It isn't just James and Gord and their staff. They are charged with the management and protection and implementation of the bylaw on private property. But all of the other trees in Richmond, and it's probably more than half of them, are actually on public lands, boulevards, parks, etc. And it's our parks department that is responsible for the management of those trees. So it's not just 3 staff citywide. That's sort of for the private lands. And then there's an apparatus of staff in the parks department that deals with all the public trees.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, just to follow up on that, 2 brief points here, or questions. The direct question is, if this bylaw amendment were to be approved and then go to council, how does it come into force? So if there's a tree on a property that's partially dead because of all the work that they've been doing around it, is that grandfathered? Or if later on we find out that it has been maliciously killed, or like when would this come into play? Thanks.
I think through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I think it would be best to ask Gord. That's getting into technical detail. Maybe, Gord, you can weigh in and let us know how that would play out.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there is no grandfathering. If it's when we proceed with prosecution. So if this amendment was approved today, any prosecutions we would begin tomorrow, that, if it's adopted, then that would take an effect. So it's when we start. The tree could have been there for 6 months and or 2 days ago, and it's when we start prosecution.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And my final follow on that through the chair to staff. It was mentioned just briefly by staff on arborists working with property owners like this bylaw would impact. And they're cutting significant trees, topping them, doing whatever their expertise is telling them is the right thing. Do we already work with all arborists who have business licenses who work in Richmond, do they actually have to go through our guidelines before they start working with what the property owner wants done? So does the city already have that? Or if not, could that be part of the referral that's coming back in 2 months if it's not already being done? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mr. Jags.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, any arborist, certified arborist that has a business license in Richmond, staff, we do outreach with them, and we have sit-downs prior to COVID, and now we have telephone calls where we'll lay out our expectations from them and what we're trying to achieve in Richmond. And that way then if they have any questions or they see things that are going on that they don't think are appropriate, there are a lot of people doing tree work in Richmond that are not certified arborists. They actually are calling us. So we're having the professionals that we work with on a regular basis letting us know when there's violations or things going on. So it's a great relationship, and it's something that we really do value and we continue to work on every day.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Alexa?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for this report. I think there was basically Councillor Wolf asked what I was going to ask about, is that, you know, a person hires an arborist, they think they're genuinely doing what they're supposed to be doing. The arborist made a mistake or what have you. I would imagine most arborists didn't get into that business just because they thought they'd get rich, because they actually like trees. So I assume that we're more in a warning and educational space with most of them. Do we have some sort of 3 strikes and you're out and you don't get your business license back in Richmond, or do we even get that far with any of them?
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, we don't really have those kinds of problems. If we see anything that's a little excessive, we actually reach out to them and we have a conversation about it and bring them on side of what our expectations are. We've never really had any big problems with arborists. Sometimes we have certified arborists that are just starting out in the business, and it's really just a level of experience. So we also work with them as well to bring them, quicken their learning and to meet our expectations.
Okay, well, I think that gives homeowners a good sense of comfort then, knowing that if they are hiring an arborist, they're going through the right process, you know, that even if there is a mistake, that they're not potentially up against this $50,000 hit to their life. And then the second thing I was going to ask about is I agree with staff's recommendation that we move through this and then bring forward further, because it was my understanding, and I think Councillor Steves had brought this up a number of times, that, you know, if someone takes down a significant tree, it doesn't mean that that's still the right kind of tree that should be grown in that neighborhood or in that spot or even in Richmond. So if it gets replaced, it should get replaced with something else. And so I think this new report that staff will be bringing forward in 2 months will more fully flesh that out of what makes sense to happen. Is that correct? My understanding correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, yes, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to make a couple points. I think it's critical we pass this at this time. We've got to be very, very proactive. First statement I make is, first of all, staff are doing a good job on it, and I thank you for what they're doing. But I think we've got to have this at the moment and get it through, because I think we need to make a statement about the value of our tree canopy. I think this is what in my opinion, the report says, and the value of foliage in terms of climate change and value. Obviously, a number of speakers spoke with, especially to the environment, that they're important. This is just a deterrent. Unfortunately, we have to use a deterrent. And I have more concern about the trimming and butchering of trees and cutting and topping of trees. You should never top a tree, as you know, cutting branches off 30 and 40 feet up, and all you've got is the top left, and it's a subtle way to kill a tree. That bylaw doesn't cover that, and I think as other people, but it's a step in the right direction for it. And Harold was talking about pioneer trees. I think we should be tagging trees that are pioneer trees. a giant sequoia, with due respect, it's more than 40 or 50 years old. It's 250 years old. And I think once you see a cutting and start counting the rings, I think it's important. And there are various trees in Richmond and that. And unfortunately, I don't think our education process is good enough because there are people that don't want trees, okay? And especially in the front yard. And we need to encourage people to plant trees as we do any other green foliage in it and not pave and put concrete blocks down, etc. So I think it's a bigger issue and we've got to continue to deal with it. This is a step in the right direction, and I hope that committee will at least support it, and we're asking to give it first, second, and third reading. So I guess I'm the last speaker. Is there anything else? And I just ask if there's a motion. Somebody move it? Second it? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Thank you very much. Go to forward, and staff keep up the good work. Okay, the next item we have is Richmond's comments on Metro Vancouver draft of the regional growth strategy for 2050. I know everybody has read it, a good document. I thank you very much. And Mr. Hopkins, yes, you're on.
Thank you to the chair. We have nothing further to add, but I would like to ask Mr. Peter Whitelaw to provide a brief summary of the report, since there's quite a bit of information in there.
Okay, yes, there is. Thank you very much. Go for it.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the summary. So briefly, at the request of Metro Vancouver, we've reviewed the draft Metro 2050 RGS and are providing comments for Council's endorsement ahead of Metro's November 26th deadline. Metro 2050 isn't a substantial rewrite of Metro 2040. It is an update focused on extending the timeline, filling some gaps, and responding to emerging priorities. I want to highlight the 4 objectives that we used to guide our response. These were to protect the city's autonomy and decision-making, to make sure that we can pursue city goals, to deliver services efficiently, both through city efforts and through regional cooperation, and lastly, where it makes sense for the city, to pursue shared regional goals. So with those objectives in mind, we noted a few changes that we felt of particular interest. First of all, the population projections are now done at a broader sub-regional level rather than at a municipal level. These are consistent with our OCP projections, and they give us greater flexibility. Second, Metro Vancouver is introducing a new trade-oriented overlay, which is proposed to secure land for trade-related businesses. Our analysis is the proposed implementation approach gives us the right amount of autonomy and flexibility in terms of how this gets rolled out on the ground. 3 new regional targets have also been defined within the draft strategy. These are a flexible performance framework to help the region as a whole achieve its shared goals. It's critical to understand that member municipalities are expected to contribute to these goals, but each municipality does not have to achieve each target. Our report discusses each one separately, and our assessment is that our existing policies and programs mean that Richmond will contribute substantially to each one. We've also noted a number of other opportunities to strengthen and clarify the draft strategy, which are within our report. I'll close by saying that Metro Vancouver's process plans for one more chance for us to review Metro 2050. They're going to take in all the comments they receive at this stage at the end of November, use them to prepare a final version. They expect to circulate this to municipal councils for review and consideration in spring 2022, and they're hoping to receive it at the board in June of 2022 for consideration. Thank you.
Okay. I want to go straight to Harold because Harold's has been on the Metro Vancouver and has dealt with this. So Harold, add to it.
Yeah, I've gone over this report half a dozen times at Metro Vancouver, but not with the fine-tooth comb that staff has, and I want to congratulate staff for doing an incredible job of going through this report. You brought up so many issues that a lot that I missed, but particularly I like the one where you talk about no net loss, and I guess that comes after we adopted this report a month or two ago. It came with a meeting we had, the last meeting, where Metro Vancouver approved the rezoning of 660 acres of green zone for industrial use, and Mayor Brody and I voted against it. It was an 82 to 52 vote weighted vote. But everything we've talked about prior to this big rainstorm about protecting canopies, there's forested land, there's agricultural land. It's an incredible area, and it's a major loss at 660 acres. It's utterly unbelievable. So I'm just pleased to see that in there. Staff will be getting that report from Metro Vancouver later on, and I'll have something to say about it when it gets here, because we're allowed to have our opinions on that. I'm hoping that Metro will change his opinion when it comes up to fourth reading in January or February. I'm not going to go through. I've made a whole pile of notes on the pages, and I won't go through them because they're just all good. And I'm just really pleased to see almost every one of the additions. You've made additions for e-bikes and e-scooters and stuff that aren't in there. And all the things that we've been talking about in Richmond for months on end. I don't know how Metro Vancouver missed all of those things that you've put in there. So I just want to congratulate you for doing an incredibly good job in putting this all together.
Great, thank you. Andy?
Well, thank you, through the chair. Well, I echo what Councillor Steeves just said, and he's got way more experience with it. But for me, it was looking at it kind of for the first time. And I'll just say, I was just very impressed with the thoroughness and the in-depth analysis and additional information that staff made. It was hard for me to actually grasp it all, quite frankly. But looking at the comments, like on page 37, the ecosystem loss, and on page 38, energy consumption and carbon storage, and then Councillor Steve just mentioned mobility devices and their autonomous vehicles, and the things that they seem to have missed in the initial report. I just read through your additional comments and just thought, wow, this is really impressive. And like Councillor Steve said, you clearly went through it with a fine-tooth comb. And yeah, I just think you did an outstanding job. Excellent comments all around. So thank you.
I would just like to echo those comments as well. I thank staff for putting in our levels. Our standards seem to be a little bit higher than Metro Vancouver and others, other municipalities, and we put more emphasis on the things that are important to us. And I appreciated the idea that you gave us an opportunity to even do better than what we've got in a direction. And I thank Mayor Brody and Councillor Steeves for what they are pushing at Metro Vancouver. It's one of the problems, being a consortium of cities and municipalities. When you get a regional growth strategy, everybody thinks they're doing a lot in their backyard, but when we look globally at what Richmond has done and accomplished, yes, we can pat ourselves on the back slightly, but let's not pat ourselves. Let's just give ourselves a little bit of clap and move forward and continue to increase it, like our carbon footprint, for example, and the things that we're doing in there, in the various things. So staff have done a fantastic analysis. As a matter of fact, we might even share that with some of the other municipalities to have them come on board. So, or Harold, at least you mention it at the next Metro Vancouver meeting that you attend. So, anything else? Yeah. I see Alexa, and then I've got Carol. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you through you to staff. Thank you for this report. It was very in-depth and a lot of work, absolutely. I really appreciated how you talked about social equity and how that should be knitted throughout all of the things that Metro Vancouver is looking at. What I was curious about was on PLN 33, you talk about what the region's expectations for growth are, what our projection, like what Metro's projections for Richmond are, and they're compared against ROCP projections. Do we have a sense of where we are now, like on that 2020 number of what our population is compared to what the projections were and how many dwelling units? Like, so sort of what's our snapshot of where we are in time?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the number that you see on page PLN 33, the projections for 2020, they're actually based on the census data from 2016 and then using building permit data to project to 2020 and then using that to continue forward. So those numbers are actually quite accurate. And
those are the real numbers. Is that what you're saying?
They are. Yes, they are.
Okay. They're not. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Carol?
much, Chair McNulty. I think you have a very good point, and I think I'd like to make a motion that we share our comments regarding the Metro Vancouver's draft plan with the other cities in Metro Vancouver, because it could be that other cities don't have the kind of expertise that we have here, and they may find our comments very helpful in their response.
Yep. Maybe that can be done, Harold, or staff take it under advisement at the appropriate time. I think we should share it as well, as I said earlier. Yeah.
My concern, Councillor McNulty, is that this is due on November 26th. I'd like to see this go out tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, staff can take that under advisement. Okay. Jack, on to you.
Yes, I support the report and also the recommendations, but I have a general concern. Now, we know that each city might have different priorities, and sometimes we are also being competitive. So I wonder, when you have a broad and general objectives and targets to meet between cities, how can we ensure that there's enough coordination and cooperation? Because my concern is that if we are moving ahead and some cities are lagging behind, actually that can put additional pressure on us. So, I just have this kind of general concern. How can we make sure that all the cities are moving forward? May not be at the same level, at the same speed, but, we are really moving forward. And whether or not this in the system right now, we can coordinate and have a better coordination. So that's my question.
Mr. Hopkins or maybe Councillor Steves, who is at the board level, can throw a comment on that. Mr. Hopkins, for starters.
Sure, yeah, to the chair, to Councillor Au. I guess a lot of the implementation items in the draft regional growth strategy will start from the regional district or from Metro Vancouver. There's policies in there that some municipalities are going to have to catch up on. Affordable housing is probably one of them. And it will be coordinated through Metro Vancouver to bring everybody on board and up to speed. So there isn't any proposed policies where Richmond is going to be in trouble, but there certainly will be part of the coordination effort through Metro Vancouver to bring other municipalities up to speed and to be able to help achieve regional targets that are outlined in the draft plan.
Okay. You all right with that, Jack? Okay. Harold?
Yeah, just to add to that, I like the idea of sending our information to other cities in advance. The reason being that this South Campbell Heights issue, the night before the vote on it struck me that they were using this to build a 400 acres of flat earth industrial site. And as it turns out, we're the only city that has gone up. And I got out our staff report and sent it to them all the night before and said, look at what we're doing. We've got 17% of the industrial land, 30% of the jobs, and we've doubled everything by going up from 12 meters to 16 meters and increasing the FAR from what's as low as 0.2 to 1.5. Malcolm and I, effectively, we led the debate on that. And so we did get a lot of support. Otherwise, it would have been unanimous the other way. But they didn't know that, and none of the rest of them have been doing that. And now they've got the city report of it. If they give any thought to it between now and January, they're going to say, holy mackerel, Richmond has got more industrial land than all the rest of us put together because they've gone up. Yep. And I think that's the problem. We have to start sharing these things around so they start thinking about it.
Okay, very good. Andy, the second time around?
Yeah, sorry, but it's just on Councillor Day's point about sharing the information. So I think it is important, so I just wanted to make sure through the chair that staff is comfortable with being able to share in time.
Let's put a motion forward. Carol, you're moving that we share it as I suggested, and Andy, you're seconding it. Okay, that we share the information appropriate, and also we give this to I always use the term the appropriate publics. Our MLA should know what's going on. Our MP should know what's going on. We can't do all this together. We've got to have all levels of government, especially when we're looking at things like housing, et cetera, et cetera. So if we can do that, and whoever else. So it's been moved, seconded. Any further discussion on the sharing of it? All those in favor, contrary, carried. Okay, John, want to wrap it up? Mr. Hopkins?
Yeah, thank you to the chair. Yeah, I just wanted to add that we will be sharing all the comments that are in the report and from council to Metro Vancouver staff. Actually, in fact, I'm meeting with a number of regional planners tomorrow. And then if council endorses the recommendation on Monday, then it will be forwarded to Metro Vancouver prior to the deadline of November 26th. The other thing I just wanted to add was about this proposed amendment for the South Campbell Heights in Surrey. We will be bringing a report to a committee, I believe, for the next meeting. That will give the committee an opportunity to chime in on that proposal.
Anyhow, job well done. Harold, last speaker.
Just a quick comment. I think it's important that it goes to the city councillors in the region, not just the staff, because what happens, it goes to the staff and all the region. It doesn't get to the councillors, and that's what I found with our bylaw on the industry. We've got a joint committee of all the planning staff of the region that go over these things, but somehow it doesn't get to the elected people. So I think it's important that we somehow reach them before the final deadline.
I think that's what the motion inferred, Harold. So anyhow, yes, good stuff. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, where are we? Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I would hate to leave this meeting with different understandings about what's going to be done in terms of sharing. What John was referring to was the normal sharing that we would do with Metro after the council meeting. But I think that what I've heard here today is something different. I think that what I've heard is that you would like staff to, ahead of the council meeting next week, share our report and comments with other member municipalities within Metro Vancouver. So I just want to confirm that that is the case, because that is atypical. It's not what we typically do. And I think it's a little more problematic, to be quite frank, having your staff distribute this material to all council members in member municipalities. We would typically not do that. We would provide the comments to our counterparts, staff counterparts at the municipalities. So, I just want to confirm that what you're telling us to do is, after this meeting, pull the trigger in terms of sending this material to the other member municipalities. And I'm going to suggest that it would be best to do that at a staff-to-staff level.
Carol?
Yeah. Okay. I hear you loud and clear, Joe. Thank you very much. What if Richmond City Council sent these observations out to other councillors? Would that kind of be a more comfortable, less atypical way of doing things?
Through the chair to Councillor Dave, I may. I think that one way to do it might be for committee to provide staff with direction to circulate after this meeting, staff to staff. And then this item, I'm expecting that it's going to pass here today, and it will be at council on Monday. Right, John? Yes. And I think that at the council meeting, you may want to consider, sending it to elected members. But it's just not, I'm not saying we can't do it. I just want to be clear what it is that we're being asked to do, because it's not typical.
Well, we have 6 members of council here, no opposition to the report. Maybe we better follow statute and go to council, and then we have the recommendation on the books that it will be forwarded to all members of the communities, we call it. And I guess it could be forwarded Tuesday morning.
My concern is Tuesday morning is November 23rd, and this the deadline for submission to the Metro report is November 26th.
And through the chair, if I may, that's often the problem, not having a lot of time on with these things. But I do think that getting the information out to our counterparts at a staff level immediately would, it's a good way to go given the short timeline that we have.
Jack? Okay.
Yeah, I understand that this is a little
circulation.
bit, yes, I understand that this is a little bit atypical. However, I'm also thinking that this is already public document, right? I mean, people can have access to it. So I think what we are doing right now is just, telling staff, go ahead and share this with some other people in other cities, those elected councillors, right? So I don't think it's too problematic. It might be atypical, but this is public information already. We are just making sure that the information is being distributed to other people that we think they should have the information.
Linda?
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. I don't want to debate.
I certainly don't want to belabor the point, and I think Matt, I saw his face appear on the screen and disappear again. If what committee is telling us to do is to send this to the staff at Metro Vancouver member municipalities immediately, that would be tomorrow, and also to direct a copy to the elected bodies in the municipalities, we're happy to take that direction. I just want it to be clear, and Matt's on the line there. Is there any problem with that? Do you foresee any problem with that? I mean, we'd have to turn it around tomorrow.
Through the chair, thank you, Joe. Not at all. I just wanted to clarify that the motion that was carried, that the information be shared as appropriate, that would go to council on next Monday for approval, and then that would be done subsequent to council.
Okay. Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I can't vote on the motion, but I agree with Councillor Al. This is a public document. Councillor Steves is a member of the Metro Vancouver Board. It could be sent out under his letterhead to whoever he feels. And I'm sure staff could help him do that if he wanted to do that.
Okay, Harold?
That's exactly what I was going to suggest.
Okay.
Somebody could put the report together. They've got the idea now because I sent a whole report, the whole amendment we did on industrial land to everybody that was on the board, all the directors, and I can do the same thing. If somebody would just put it all together and put my name on it and my email address, that'd be great.
Okay, Alexa.
Thank you to the chair. It seems to me that, Councillor Steve's idea to bring it forward makes sense. It also seems to me, though, that us rallying the rest of the troops around some of our amendments are they're small, reasonable amendments for the most part, what we're suggesting, the things that we've proposed. And I think the whole point of this is that they're taking comments from anyone who's felt the need to put them in. And so, I think they'll be taking it under advisement, and most of these make sense. I can't imagine that, they're going to dump any of them wholesale, and if any of them they do, it probably won't make a huge difference at the end of the 2050 timeline. So I don't know that running around trying to get it in everybody's hands is going to make it more voted on or less voted on at the end of the day.
But I think we're making a statement, and I think if we follow direction that was just prescribed, putting under Councillor Steve's signature and let it go. I think the one thing the SOLA staff can take, we're very proud of the document. You've done a great job, and we want to share that with everybody. And I don't see any negativism from that a lot, even though it is, hey, sometimes breaking protocol doesn't hurt. Okay, so are we of the consensus that the previous motion included that? Unless I hear contrary. Thank you very much, and a tremendous vote of thanks to staff, okay, for good work and good job done. You'll be proud of the work you've done. So thank you very much. And with that, do we have any managers' reports? Carol, your hand's still up. I didn't know if you were waving it. Okay. Any managers' reports?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a bit of information. You may recall that staff was directed to look at potentially changing the name of Trutch Avenue in the city back in June of this year. Part of the referral from council requested that we consult with the neighborhood residents. Staff will be sending a consultation letter to the 20-odd residents of Trutch Avenue this week, seeking their feedback as part of our review of this referral.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anything else from staff? Motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried. Give us